Hi, I'm Tyler Folse. I'm a nuclear engineer with a little over 10 years of experience in the commercial nuclear power industry, from engineering to operations to emergency response. Don't claim to know everything there is nuclear, but I can certainly share some knowledge. Today we're going to be looking at another one of Bill Wurtz's videos called History of Japan. Saw a lot of you really liked History of the Entire World, I guess, so here's one focused in on just one country. Let's check it out.
Japan is an island by the sea filled with volcanoes and it's beautiful.
I love these jingles. They're just so catchy, and I can see why a lot of people really like these videos.
In the year negative a billion, Japan might not...
No. Continents were in a much different position than a billion years ago.
In the year negative 40,000, it was here, and
There
you
you
could
go.
walk to it, and some people walked to it. Then it got warmer, some icebergs melted, it became an island, and now there's lots of trees, because it's warmer. So now there's people on the island. They're basically sort of hanging out in between the mountains, eating nuts off trees, and using the latest technology, like stones and bowls. Ding dong, it's the outside world, and they have technology from the future, like really good metal and crazy rice farms.
That's one thing that's fascinating. Such an isolated region of the world that before ships, large-scale ocean travel, it might as well have been a completely different world. It's just fascinating.
Now you can make a lot of rice really, really quickly. That means if you own the farm, you own a lot of food, which is something everybody needs to survive. So that makes you king. Rice farming and rice kingdoms spread across the land, all the way to here. The most important kingdoms were here, 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 and here. But this one was the most important, ruled by a heavenly superperson, or emperor for short. Knock knock, get the door, it's religion. The new prince wants everyone to try this hot new religion from Biek. Please try this religion, he said. No, said everybody. Try it, he said. No, said everybody again, quieter this time. And so the religion was put into place, and all the
I like that. Quieter this time. People go with it.
rules that came with it. Then the government was taken over by another clique, and they made some reforms, like making the government govern more, and making the government more like China's government, which is a government that governs more. Hi, China, they said. Hi, dipshit, said China. Can you call us something else other than dipshit, said Japan. Like what, said China. How about Sunrise Land, said Japan. And they stole China's alphabet and wrote
It's an awesome explanation of how they got their name from.
about themselves. And then they made lots of poetry and art and another book about themselves. Then they stopped moving the capital every time the emperor died and kept it in one place for a while, right here. And they conquered the north finally. Get that squared away. A rich hipster named Kukai is bored with modern Buddhism, visits China, and learns a better version, which is more spiritual. Comes back, reinvents the alphabet, and causes art and literature to be great for a long
I'm noticing a pattern here.
time. And the royal palace turned into such a dream world of art that they really didn't give a shit about running the country. So if you live outside the palace, how are you supposed to protect your shit from criminals? Hire a samurai. Everyone started hiring samurai. Rich, important people hired samurai. Poor people who could not afford to hire samurai did not hire samurai. The samurai became organized and powerful, more powerful than the government. So they made their own military government. Here, they let the emperor still be emperor, but the shogun is actually in control. Breaking news, the Mongols have invaded China,
We've invaded China.
said the Mongols.
Please respect us, or else we might invade you as well.
Okay, said Japan. So the Mongols came over, ready for war, and died in a tornado. But they tried again, and had a nice time fighting with the Japanese, but then died in a tornado. Then the emperor overthrows the shogunate. Then the shogunate overthrows him back and moves to Kyoto and makes a new shogunate. And the emperor can still dress like an emperor if he wants, that's fine. Now there's more art. Like painting with less colors, collaborative poetry, plays, monkey fun, tea parties, gardening, architecture, flowers. It's time for who's going to be the next shogun. Usually it's the shogun's kid, but the shogun doesn't have a kid. So he tries to get his brother to quit being a monk and be the next shogun. He says okay, but then the shogun has a kid. So now who's it going to be? Vote now on your phones.
I love how it goes through all of the regime changes and does it so downplayed, even though in many cases these weren't exactly your bloodless events or peaceful transition to power. It's downplaying, but in a very, very fun way, and I can appreciate that.
Everyone voted so hard that the palace caught on fire and burned down. The shogun actually didn't care. He was off somewhere doing poetry. And the whole country broke into pieces. Everyone is fighting with each other for local power, and it's anybody's game. Knock knock, it's Europe. No, they're not here to take over. They just want to sell
I was going to say something very similar happened in Europe before too, so it's good to know that these sort of things are almost universal with empires forming, falling, fragmenting, and we'll see what happens in the future.
clocks and guns and Jesus. So that's cool, but everyone's
I've heard someone made the comparison to like the Europeans showed up as being akin to the aliens showing up in Independence Day and casting a big shadow over the cities with a bunch of technology that no one has ever seen before. Not sure how true that is, if that comparison's accurate, but that's just. Can you imagine these ships and things coming out of nowhere? You can imagine how the people in ancient Japan, or I guess feudal or Japan, would have reacted to something like this.
Fighting each other for control, now with guns. And wouldn't it be nice to control the capital, which right now is puppets with no one controlling them? This clan is ready to make a run for it, but first they have to trample this smaller clan, which is in the way. Surprise, the smaller clan wins, and the leader of that clan steals the idea of invading the capital and invades the capital, and it goes very well. He's about halfway through conquering Japan when someone who works for him kills him, and then someone else who works for him kills them, and that guy finishes conquering Japan. And then he confiscated everybody's swords, and made some rules. And now I'm going to invade Korea, and then hopefully China, he said, and failed, and all.
Now I can't stop thinking about the Total War. Is it Shogun or the Japanese version of Total War, which just made me think about all these sort of conquests from this time period.
Died. But before he died, he told these 5 guys to take care of his 5-year-old son until he's old enough to be the next ruler of Japan. And the 5 guys said, yeah, right, it's not going to be this kid, it's going to be one of us, because we're grown-ups. And it's probably going to be this guy, who happens to be way more rich and powerful than the others. A lot of people support him, but a lot of people support not supporting him. They have a fight, and he wins, and starts a new government, right here. And he still lets the emperor dress like an emperor, and have very nice things. But don't get confused, this is the new government, and they are very strict. So strict they closed the country. No one can leave and no one can come in. Except for the Dutch, if they want to buy and sell shit. But they have to do it right here. Now that the entire country was not at war with itself, the population increased a lot. Business increased, schools were built, roads were built, everyone learned to read, books were published, there was poetry, play.
Imagine that. People aren't fighting each other and then you have a lot of progress. Though there is a lot of progress has also been in the support of war and in order to help wage wars. So this is one of those controversial subjects. I'm sure you'll have a lot to say about it down in the comment section below. But yeah, I like the idea of doing it peacefully, though.
Sexy times, puppet shows, and Dutch studies. People started to study European science from books they bought from the Dutch. We're talking geography, skeletons, physics, chemistry, astronomy, and maybe even electricity. Over time, the economic and cultural prosperity began to gradually slow down. Knock knock. It's the United States, with huge boats, with guns. Gunboats.
Now this probably also would have been like in Independence Day when the Americans show up in the 1800s.
Open the country. Stop having it be closed, said the United States. There's really nothing they could do, so they signed a contract that lets the United States, Britain, and Russia visit Japan anytime they want. Choshu and Satsuma hated this. That sucks, they said. This sucks. And with almost very little outside help, they overthrew the shogunate and somehow made the emperor again and moved him to Edo, which they renamed Eastern Capital. They made a new government, which was a lot more Western. They made a new constitution that was pretty Western, and a military that was pretty Western. And do you know what else is Western? That's right, it's conquering stuff. So what can we conquer? Korea. They conquer Korea, taking it from its previous owner, China, and then go a little bit further. And Russia rushes in out of nowhere and says, stop, no, you
I see what they did there, Russia rushing in. That's pretty clever.
can't take that. We were going to build a railroad through here to try to get some warm water. And Russia builds their railroad, supervised by a shit ton of soldiers. And then when the railroad was done, they downgraded to a fuck ton. Did I say downgrade? I meant upgrade. And Japan says, can you maybe chill? And Russia says, how about maybe you chill? Japan is kind of scared of Russia. You'll never guess who's also kind of scared of Russia. Great Britain. So Japan and Great Britain make an alliance together so they can be a little less scared of Russia.
I'm sure that one's gonna last.
Confident, Japan goes to war against Russia, just for a moment, and then they both get tired and stop. It's time for World War I. The world is about to have a war, because it's the 1900s and weapons are getting crazy, and all these empires are excited to try them out on each other. Meanwhile, Japan has been enjoying conquering stuff and wants more. And the next thing on their list is this part of China and lots of tiny islands.
I think it's interesting. So Japan opens up, westernized faster than any other country in history, and now it's like, hey, we're going to join the glorious conquest club with our European friends.
All that stuff belongs to Germany, which just had war declared on it by Britain because Britain was friends with Belgium, which was being trespassed by Germany in order to get to France to kick France's ass because France is friends with Russia, who was getting ready to kick Austria's ass because Austria was getting ready to kick Serbia's ass because someone from Serbia shot the leader of Austria's ass. Or actually shot him in the head.
Secret alliance chains. Kind of like decay chains for radioisotopes in nuclear physics.
And Britain is currently friends with Japan, so you know what that means. Duh, Japan should take the islands. Which they wanted to do anyway, so they called Britain on the telly to sort of let them know. And then they did it. And they also helped Britain a little here and there with some errands and stuff. Now the war is over, and congratulations, Japan, you technically fought in the war, which means you get to sit at the negotiating table with the big dudes, where they decided who owns what. And yes, Japan gets to keep all that shit they stole from Germany. You also get to join the post-war mega alliance, the League of Nations, whose mission statement is to try not to take over the world. The Great Depression is bad, and Japan's economy is
Crazy how little the League of Nations actually did. Think of them as an even less potent UN.
crappy, but the military is doing just fine, and it invades Manchuria. In the League of Nations, it's like, no, don't do that. If you're in the League of Nations, you're not supposed to take over the world. And Japan said, how about I do anyway? And Japan invaded more and more of China, and was planning to invade the entire East.
You've got mail.
It's from Germany, the new leader of Germany. He has a cool mustache, and he's trying to take over the world and needs friends.
Oh boy.
This also got forwarded to Italy. They all decided to be friends because they had so much in common. It's time for World War II. Germany is invading the neighbors. Then they invade the neighbors' neighbors. Then the neighbors' neighbors' neighbors, who happened to be Britain, said, holy shit. And the United States started helping Britain because they are good friends, and started not helping Japan because they're friends and our friends are not friends. Plus they're planning on invading the entire ocean. The United States is also working on a large, very huge bomb, bigger than any other bomb, ever, just in case. But they still haven't joined the war. War looks bad on TV, and the United States is really starting to care about their image. But then Japan spits on them in Hawaii and challenges them to war. And they say yes. And then Germany, as a symbol of friendship, declares war on the United States.
War request. I like that. I kind of like that. You can accept or decline war requests because there's all these secret wars out there that people refuse to actually acknowledge that just technically didn't have a formal declaration of war or a formal ending of war, like the Korean War in the 1950s that I think we're still technically at war. It's just been a ceasefire.
Also, so the United States goes to war in Europe, and they help the gang chase Germany back into Germany, and they also start chasing Japan back into Japan. And they haven't used the bomb yet, and are curious to see if it works, so they drop it on Japan.
They tested it before. Yeah, any new crazy weapon like that, you're gonna want to test it. I like that though.
They actually dropped 2.
So one thing I will point out is, so while these new nuclear weapons at the time, new crazy super weapons, they were devastating, but the fire bombings of Tokyo killed a similar number of people. So there was already a massive air raid going on over Japan at the time. So on these cities that exist, some others probably doesn't include Tokyo right now. But that is just one thing. Is, well, again, this was horrific. The nuclear weapons weren't the only thing responsible for the massive loss of civilian life that tragically occurred in order to end this war. Though experts do predict that if the war would have went on for longer and people would have invaded, and I saw several people point that out in the comments on the History of the World video, which I greatly appreciate, then this war would have been far more deadly.
The United States installed a new government, inspired by the United States government, with just the right ingredients for a post-war economic miracle. And Japan starts making TVs, VCRs, automobiles, and camcorders as fast as they can, and also better than everybody else. They get rich, and the economy goes wild, and then the miracle wears off. But everything's still pretty cool, I guess. Bye.
That's a great summary. I love how they take horrific wars in this video that Bill Wurtz did, and then almost creates this little positive short, spin on it and I don't feel that it's disrespectful to the people that tragically lost their lives due to these wars, but it's just humanity. We gotta laugh at ourselves sometime, and I think Bill Wurtz did a really good job with this. If you haven't already, check out my reaction to the other Bill Wurtz video, A History of the Entire World, I guess. It's kind of like this one, but you're focusing on the entire world rather than just Japan. And if you'd like to, I would really appreciate it if you would join me on a clean nuclear energy future by liking, commenting, and subscribing. I greatly appreciate it. Thank you very much for watching. I'll see you next time. Take care.